big time middleweight scrap and a possible fight of the night. We have Cage Warriors main man of middleweight. It's Christian Leroy Duncan taking on the Serbian thunder that is Dusko Todorovic. And Matt, this is a big time fight because for Christian Leroy Duncan, if you consider it, he had kind of a pro boxing upbringing in MMA. We saw him fight with Mokaev. He's no Diamond Dame Anderson from Creed 3. He didn't just have no pro fights and then fights for a title. Duncan was able to go out there, compete with some really big names over with the Mokaev, and then all of a sudden that translated so well as a pro because he was so well seasoned, almost like a Muhammad Mokaev, but Leroy Duncan has definitely tasted some defeat. Yeah. He's been able to go out there as a pro and dust everyone. Dusto.
He's looked pretty good.
Has been Christian Leroy Duncan. So if you consider it, he's been able to do all of this great work over with Cage Warriors. All of the pro fights are there. He has the one decision in the rematch to Will Curry. But I mean, apart from that, some giant wins. He fights Justin Moore, and I've never seen a bigger favorite with Cage Warriors than Mr. Duncan. When he fought Justin Moore, because Moore's record was a little bit salty, goes out there and submits him and made it look really easy. But there's a reason why I'm so excited about these fights, Matt. It's because for Duncan, he's got a flying knee knockout over Milan when he's fighting for the title, challenging for it. He's got a spinning elbow knockout over Dimitrov when he's trying to defend that belt. That's not even the craziest part about that. He throws a Raymond Daniels like 720 start head kick that really knocks things off as the fight starts. He also has a spinning back kick knockout over Lukasz Marcinkowski. So if you watch these fights for Christian Leroy Duncan, who for this fight isn't training at home, and you might go, well, where's home, Craig? Where does he train out of? Well, he trains close to home in England, but his coach is Mark Weir, and you might go, well, Mark Weir, didn't he knock out Eugene Jackson back at UFC 38 in 10 friggin' seconds? Yeah, history lesson. He friggin' did. So for Christian Leroy Duncan, some crazy lineage there. Training at Tiger Muay Thai for this fight. Phil Hawes on his Instagram, but there's a lot of fighters on this card out of Tiger Muay Thai. He's got his hands full, does Duncan, though, in Todorovic, and Todorovic knows bonuses and knows wild fights. Certainly. Former Serbian Battle Challenge champ, he beat Michel Pereira, and he's got a way in his back pocket, because I've talked about the wildness of Duncan, but for Todorovic, when he's able to win some of these fights, pressing forward, marching forward, holding guys down, and when he wins, apart from the Jordan Wright fight, he's just kind of holding guys down, and he kind of slows the fight down to where he's able to find success with his own wrestling.
Is he the striking version of Sarah McMahon? Because here's the thing, when Dusko's the guy moving forward with his own power shots, but he's able to threaten with the wrestling, he is a really effective fighter, but when he's the guy being pushed backwards, he does seem a little bit uncomfortable, and that's been the problem with Dusko Todorovic throughout his UFC tenure. The highs are very high, and even throughout certain fights, even when he loses, he will look good throwing in combination, because at middleweight's a weird division, right? It's kind of the in-between between the smaller divisions and the bigger divisions, quite literally called middleweight, but some guys have great kind of one-punch knockout power, and some guys do rely a little bit more on volume. Dusko is much more of the one-punch knockout guy, I would say, than he is more reliant on volume. Can he throw in combination? Yes, he can, but his combinations come a lot more when he has guys up against the cage after he has pressured them. The Michel Pereira fight is one of the great ones of all time. He has him hurt, throws a beautiful combination up against the cage after he had pressured him, and that's the thing about Dusko. When he's fighting under the terms that he likes to fight under, he is a great fighter.
His fight after that on Dana White's Contender Series a few years ago, he takes on Teddy Ash, former unified champ up here in Canada, but on the West Coast in Alberta, and if you watch that fight, Dusko goes out there, pushes the pace, they're chest to chest, and then he brutalizes him up against the cage, and he doesn't knock him out, but it's kind of a death by 1,000 cuts type of win. But so far in the UFC, if you look at it for Dusko and you consider some of the bonuses and the guys that he's fought, he goes out there and fights Taquan Townsend first fight in the UFC, takes him down, and then from mount just reigns away, picks up a bonus for that fight. He gets dropped multiple times by Puna Soriano in the first round, takes on Gregory Rodriguez, gets out-muscled, out-wrestled, out-struck. Then he takes on Maki Pitolo, beats Maki in the first round. Chidi Njokuani knocks him out in the first round. So a tough one there for old Dusko. But the one fight that doesn't match the mold for Todorovic, he gets completely out-wrestled by Jordan Wright in the first round, which I would have thought, Wright trains with Vladimir Matyushenko, but he's not really a grappler.
Janitor.
And he went out there and had a great time with the takedowns against Dusko. Second round comes out, Jordan Wright's huffing and puffing, and then all of a sudden Dusko is able to kind of pull out a big-time win. And if you look at it for the play for Dusko, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a Taekwondo black belt. He has everything to beat somebody in middleweight, and a guy like Christian Leroy Duncan to boot, because if you look at it for Duncan, I go back to that first title fight that he has against Milan, and Jadi Milan's going out there, goes for the takedown at the start of the first round, gets it, and then for 4.5 minutes, he holds down Duncan. Now, Duncan's got a great first move off that, backs his way right up to the cage. We got to get right back up to our feet.
Duncan would do great like an NFL combine. You know, like his numbers would be insane because he does have that athleticism X factor that we don't often see in MMA.
Well, and both of these guys definitely have it to an extent, but when you look at it overall, I mean, combined opponent record for a guy like Duncan, 7 wins, 45-11. That's pretty darn good. And he was supposed to defend against a big name in Jesse Taylor back on New Year's Eve in 2022. Taylor was on his way to the fight, and then somebody hit that car over in England. So it was a hit and run. Taylor wasn't able to fight. So I'm watching the Cage Warriors card. I'm all excited. And then they're like, no, the fight's not going to happen. But Graham Boylan, who manages a lot of the Cage Warriors alum, goes, well, now he's in the UFC. He's going to fight in the UFC, getting ready. He's going to be on a London card. So we get Duncan in this matchup against Todorovic. You have a look at the odds. Duncan's favored in his UFC debut against a guy who has a fair bit of experience in Todorovic. We have a look at the Topology votes, Matt. Surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over-under. I think it's going to be slight to fairly slight. So I'm going to say over-under 67.5% Duncan here.
I think it'll be under.
I think it's going to be under. It's over. 848 total votes, 86% Duncan, 86% by knockout. For the 14% that have Todorovic, 55% by knockout. The fans want blood. They think there's going to be a knockout.
Teddy Atlas has a great saying where it's, hey, don't stick around for the receipt after you pay. Like, after you do what you want to do, leave. Dusko doesn't do that at all. Dusko doesn't stay for a receipt. He stays for a conversation with the cashier.
Kid gets coffee and a dessert.
Yeah, like he'll talk to the people behind him in line as they're at the checkout. And that's my big problem with Dusko throughout his UFC tenure. And really throughout his whole career. The highs are high, the aggression is great, but the problem is, after he tees off on his opponent, the hands go from here to down by his waist. And I do think Duncan's the type of striker who can take advantage of some of those defensive lapses in Dusko Todorovic, but I think we both agree on this. Dusko's a pretty good guy to face in her UFC tenure. So for Duncan to get the respect from not only the odds makers, but just from the UFC matchmakers to give him a fight like this, I think it shows what his overall ceiling could be.
And I wouldn't say that it's a possible fight of the night because I see it one-sided for either fighter. I think Duncan's going to face the most attrition he has so far in his pro career. And again, his fight against Milan, he gets taken down, and then in the third round, he throws an axe kick, they say crescent kick, that doesn't land, and then that sets up the flying knee, and his opponent was really tired at that point, but the spinning attacks, the ability to switch stances very quickly, change his levels, offer different looks. He has good takedowns in his own right, but I think Duncan taking down Todorovic could end up being a mistake, so I love the fight. I ever so slightly have Christian Leroy Duncan, but this should be an amazing matchup, Matt. A lot of fighters out of the UK getting ready for this card. 15 total fights on it. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.